Good morning and welcome to Chantex Multimedia live streaming from Brisbane, Australia on this 19th day of October. It's a wonderful day there, and as we have mentioned before, the festive season of Navratri has begun and the Hindu devotees are geared up to celebrate in full fervor, obviously under the current restrictions. So apart from worshipping goddess Durga, playing dandiyas, fasting, making special Navratri foods, many people also follow traditional colors of Navratri. The 9 days and 9 colors have different significance. So this year, of course, the festival has begun on 17th and it will end on Sunday. So tonight is day 3. So today, people will wear red, certain red tie. So people will wear red color on the 3rd day of Navratri. It signifies beauty and fearlessness. Hindu goddess Chandraghanta is worshipped on this day. So ladies and gentlemen, before we get further into the news for today, and we have a lot to talk about after the weekend roundup, but first of all, let's take a very quick look at the weather, and with the weather outlook, let's welcome to the studios Dilraj.
Good morning everyone. Weather forecast for the rest of day is maximum 29 degree. Brisbane area is partly cloudy with 20% chances of rain. Light winds becoming northeast to southeasterly 15 to 25 km in the early afternoon, then tending southeasterly in the evening. Fire danger is high. Sun protection is recommended till 3 p.m. and UV index is predicted to reach 9, that is very high. Till tomorrow, stay safe and have a good day.
And wonderful news there. And right now, thank you so much, Dilraj. Moving on, let's take a very quick look at, as I said, today is the 3rd day of Navratri, and the 3rd day is Mata Chandraghanta. So let's take a very quick look at the Istuti or the prayer for that, and this is done by Anuradha Podwalji.
नवरात्रि के तीसरे दिन चंद्र घंटा का था, मस्तक पर है अर्घ चंद्र मंद मंद मुस्कान, 10 हाथों में अस्त्र शस्त्र रखे खड्ग संग बाण, घंटे की झनकार से हरती दुष्ट के प्राण, सिंह वाहिनी दुर्गा का चमके स्वर्ण शरीर, करती विपदा शांति हरो भक्त की पीर, मधुर वाणी को बोल कर सबको देती ज्ञान, जितने देवी देवता सभी करे सम्मान, अपने शांत स्वभाव से सबका धरती था, भवसागर में फंसा हूँ मैं, करो मेरा कल्याण।
नवरात्रों की माँ कृपा कर दो माँ, नवरात्रों की माँ कृपा कर दो माँ।
जय माँ चंद्र घंटा, जय माँ चंद्र घंटा, जय माँ चंद्र घंटा, जय माँ चंद्र घंटा।
Hey Ma Chandraghanta, as we know, today is the 3rd day of Navratri, and it is wonderful. And very soon we will be joining in with the Premier who is just gone live. So we'll do that crossover very soon. But right now, let's take a very quick look at across the Tasman, and congratulations to Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern once again being elected, and this time with a very good majority.
In the end, it wasn't even close.
Tonight, New Zealand has shown the Labour Party its greatest support in at least 50 years.
More than the Prime Minister could have hoped for.
We will not take your support for granted, and I can promise you, we will be a party that governs for every New Zealander.
The opposition leader gracious in defeat.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who I have phoned before, congratulations. on your result because it is, I believe, an outstanding result for the Labor Party.
Even if Crusher Collins was still displaying some of her trademark bluntness.
And I say to everybody, we will be back.
The result means it's possible Labour will be able to form majority government without a coalition partner, a first since proportional representation was introduced in the 1990s. As polls closed, journalists hungry for results were kept well fed by Ardern's partner.
We've had such a long run with everything, so there's sort of a sense of relief that we're at this place now.
Right now,
These
let's join
voters were
our
among
Premier
the
here and
minority
we'll go back
after
to that
almost
news
2
there.
million
So
New
the Premier is
Zealanders
live
took
now.
advantage of advance voting.
More jobs. Today I also want to talk to you about our $160 million Gold Coast Health Plan. We already talked about the $140 million for expansion into mental health, but today I can announce we have identified the new site for the Coomera Hospital. We actually own the land, the state government owns the land, the people of this state own the land, and we've identified, as we know, Coomera is a fast-growing community, and we know that we need an extra hospital there into the future. So there'll be a business case to work through that. Of course, we're also going to be investing $5.7 million into a second computed scanner for Robina Hospital. So the Health Minister will talk a little bit more about that. So as you can see, we have a very strong commitment to the Gold Coast. Today is great news for the Gold Coast, for small business, but right across our state. As we back small business, they are the backbone of our economy. They employ 1 million people. It's all about creating jobs and making sure that the government is giving assistance where it's needed most. And that's what we did, especially with those $200 million small business grants during COVID, as well as electricity rebates, payroll tax rebates. Minister for Small Business will talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So I'll hand over to Shannon, and then we'll hear from Jeff and Shannon, who run this wonderful organisation here, and then we'll hear from the Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Premier. Well, today is fantastic news for small businesses
Shannon,
and great
thank you,
to be launching this great policy with a small business success story right here in Nerang on the Gold Coast with Jeff and Shannon. This is all about backing small businesses to keep employing Queensland. As the Premier has said, $140 million to help our small businesses rebuild even stronger after COVID. We know that many of them did it very tough during COVID, and that's why the government responded quickly with $2.3 billion in support for our small businesses. Payroll tax deferrals. Hardly any businesses will be paying payroll tax in Queensland this year. Electricity rebates, $1 billion in no-interest loans, and of course our COVID-19 adaptation grants. And it was wonderful to hear from Jeff and Shannon today about what a game changer that COVID adaptation grant was for their business to really make sure that their warehouse was working strongly so they could get back to what they do best, and that's exporting their beautiful products across the globe. We know we have to back our small businesses to keep growing and to keep employing Queenslanders. This announcement today also includes $10 million to support the ongoing role of the Small Business Commissioner. It has been such a success setting up the Office of the Small Business Commissioner in Queensland. They have assisted over 2,500 small businesses already with retail lease disputes and many other matters. So keeping that position is just so critical to providing that ongoing support for our small businesses, as well as $100 million for Business Investment Fund, which is matched funding for businesses that really want to grow. It's also about our small business grants. That's about making sure our businesses are upskilling, they're getting digitally ready, and that they will come out of this more resilient and stronger than ever before. And this is in stark contrast to the LNP's record on small business. When they were in government, they broke their promises to small businesses when it came to payroll tax, and they abolished the Office of the Small Business Commissioner. Well, we're making sure the Office of the Small Business Commissioner is here to stay. We're putting in place some great programs to help businesses, our successful Mentoring for Growth program, a new business-ready website, all about backing our small businesses. It's great news for small businesses. million Queenslanders they employ.
And great news for Queenslanders, as of course we know the infrastructure is much needed, and without the infrastructure in place, and and when the funds are being used in this manner, when they are going towards the essential needs, as in hospitals and in roads, that is wonderful news to see. Well, right now let's go to the news that we were watching before, and looking at the win of Jacinda Ardern and New Zealand.
Voting today, I didn't want to wait, because you don't know what's going to happen in those 2 weeks.
In the end, they chose to give Ardern a second term, her victory never really in doubt. But it could all have been so different if COVID hadn't hit. Her go hard, go early mantra paid off. The virus more or less contained, the party's ratings back on the rise. It wasn't, of course, the only crisis the Prime Minister had to manage. She won hearts and minds for her response to the Christchurch terrorist attacks and the Whakaari White Island eruption. But she didn't deliver on many of her key domestic policy pledges. If that doesn't change, New Zealanders won't be so understanding next time around. Barbara Miller, ABC.
So, wishing her all the best, and of course we know that this time she has come in with a very strong majority, and that is wonderful to see. Well, right now let's hear from our Prime Minister as he has a message for Year 12s.
Today I want to shout out and cheer on and wish all of our Year 12 students all the best for your exams and assessments. You've worked incredibly hard to get where you are this year, and for every one of you right across Australia, you've had to face one of the toughest final years anyone can remember. You've had to face adulthood from front on and too early on. I'm incredibly proud of you, and I know your families are proud of you also. I firmly believe that in the years to come, the class of 2020 will turn out to be a magnificent year for producing future Australian leaders, great citizens. You've faced that uncertainty, you've adapted, you've supported each other, and you've kept your head down and you've kept going. You've taken on the responsibilities of adulthood, and in the years to come, when you hit tough times, as we all do at some point, you will be able to say to yourself, I got through 2020 in my final year of school, so I can get through this, and that's true. I have one piece of advice to you though. Make sure you pay attention to your mental health in the weeks ahead. That means sleeping well, exercise if you can, and if you're feeling fearful or anxious, please make sure you talk to someone. People are there for you, family, friends, teachers, or there's services like Headspace. We're all here to support you. I believe a problem shared is, of course, a problem halved, and assessments are important, but they're not as important as you. I want you to understand that. They are not as important as you. I'm sure every Australian is very proud of what you've all achieved this year as the class of 2020. I certainly am proud of you. And I know in the weeks ahead, as you go through this last period in your assessments and your exams, I know you'll keep pushing through. And once you push through, you'll be able to look back at this year. You'll be able to look back at a year that was so difficult, and you'll be able to look forward with a sense of confidence in what you're able to achieve and what you're able to do. So good luck, class of 2020, and well done.
And the class of 2020, yes, it will be remembered and will be remembered for a very, very long time. And as the Prime Minister said, say your problems are problems, say it is problem halved, and quite so too. Well, right now, as we know, the pre-poll begins today. So from today, if you want to do the early votings, just look up your closest polling station, which is open, and you can go and cast your vote without having to wait for the final day. So in Queensland, the pre-polling has started today, and many people would be taking advantage of that and voting early. Well, right now, talking about the votes and of course the election, let's look at the launches of both the parties and how they've launched the final week leading into the election campaigns. Of course, we know it has been brought forward a little bit because of the IFL final Yes, which is happening in Brisbane.
Queensland Liberal Nationals have officially launched their campaign to win government, hosting a rally with its party faithful in Brisbane. State political reporter Stephanie Zillman reports.
The Queensland LNP officially launched its campaign on a policy of achieving a 5% unemployment target and major infrastructure projects as key differences from Labor. Deb Frecklington received a hero's welcome from the party faithful, a crowd including Peter Dutton and Rob Borbidge with front row seats. Ms Frecklington talked up the party's previous policy announcements, like $15 billion to build the new Bradfield scheme, a system of dams to irrigate outback Queensland. She also singled out the LNP's plans to spend $1 billion providing $300 rego rebates for every registered vehicle in Queensland. Their plans to duplicate the Bruce Highway, the key route that leads from Gympie all the way north to Cairns, received applause.
The Queensland economy was in trouble long before COVID. Well, now it is in crisis. And this election is all about who has the best plan to lead Queensland out of this recession.
The LNP has criticised Labor for not having a budget before the election. They haven't released their own policy costings yet either. The official party launches would ordinarily have been next weekend, but because Brisbane is hosting the AFL Grand Final, they had to go early.
The Queensland Premier has launched her election campaign south of Brisbane today, pitching the Labor Party as a strong, stable choice for government. Anastasia Palaszczuk also committed that if re-elected, her government will introduce legislation early next year to legalise voluntary assisted dying.
Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk officially launched the Labor Party's election campaign here in Beenleigh, south of Brisbane this morning. This is one of the last times the Premier will be able to make her pitch to Queenslanders before early voting starts tomorrow. Ms Palaszczuk's final push today framed the Labor Party as a strong, stable choice for government that will lead the state out of economic distress caused after the coronavirus pandemic. She also made several announcements, including funding for more teachers and teachers' aides, $100 million for a student mental health and wellbeing package, and offering free TAFE for students under 25 for priority qualifications.
The government I lead will introduce legislation in February next year to provide for the legalisation of voluntary assisted dying.
Ms Palaszczuk will continue campaigning tomorrow for the rest of the two-week election campaign. Queenslanders head to the polls on October 31st.
So October 31st is the day, and of course, as I mentioned before, that the pre-polling has begun, and if you'd like to vote early, you can go and vote. Find out your nearest polling station, and go and get the voting done even way before the date, and that way you'll beat all the crowd on the day. Of course, you will probably miss out on not having your traditional barbecues, but this is all happening right here. Well, right now let's move on with the news, and moving on with the news, we're going to go and look at some of the events and functions that have been taking place here in Brisbane. And of course, we know we've been talking about Navratri. Let's take a very quick look at Navratri as it's on its night last night at Vishnu Maya Mandir. So here's the glimpses of the night. Vishnu Maya Mandir, and of course last night was wonderful to see all the local talents coming in to see all the bhajans, Mata Ki Chowki there as well, and as you can see, Dharam Group, Pandit Tripathi ji blessing all the food donors and the sponsors for the night. And of course we had reasonably good turnout considering the current COVID conditions. So well done, and it's a wonderful night at Vishnu Maya Mandir last night. Well, moving on, let's go to the news in brief. And first of all, we'll look at, as we were looking at before, New Zealand. And the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says she will not take too much time forming her government.
I said yesterday that today the work would begin, and it has. Already this morning, obviously meeting with senior members of my team and having spoken to a few others as we work through a timetable for the formation of government. My expectation is that we will form government within the next 2 to 3 weeks. There is precedent for governments to be formed before final counts are taken, when it's clear that a mandate exists. And it is clear in this case that a mandate exists for that. So whilst it will be another 3 weeks before we have that final result, my expectation is that we will work on government formation within that time frame. I've also had the opportunity to speak this morning with the Governor-General to confirm that we have the ability to form a government as well.
So she has spoken to the Governor-General and that they have the majority and the mandate to form a government. So she will be moving in quickly without, wasting time there and moving quickly. But right now, here in Australia, our Premier's under pressure. Victoria's low numbers of coronavirus cases are unlikely to quieten Daniel Andrews' critics, who maintain Victorian Premier has failed this pandemic, while a secret relationship with the disgraced MP has left New South Wales Premier fighting for her political survival. Premier's under pressure.
Hands down, this has been one of the most difficult days of my life.
The Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, has delivered explosive evidence to the Independent Commission Against Corruption.
You're in a close personal relationship with Mr Maguire.
He's being investigated by the corruption watchdog over property deals.
I stuffed up in my personal life.
The news came today, which was a surprise to many people.
Came as a surprise, of course.
If you thought you knew Gladys Berejiklian, then think again.
I don't blame my colleagues for feeling shocked and disappointed.
It was certainly a pretty extraordinary day in Australian politics, even by New South Wales politics standards.
The government's had a terrible day yesterday with the Premier, and I think we really seriously now need to look at the next steps.
Gladys Berejiklian has no choice but to resign.
Have you considered resigning? No, I haven't, because I haven't done anything wrong. I have done nothing wrong.
She's awesome, and she's a great leader.
I trusted someone who didn't deserve to have my trust, and I'm deeply regretful of that.
Did the Premier know about any of your business dealings?
No way.
Had I known then what I know now, of course I would have had nothing to do with him.
Are you still in a close personal relationship with Ms Berejiklian? I hope after the events of this I wouldn't be.
He sought your guidance and reassurance on solving his major financial problems. Will you admit that you were his sounding board for corruption?
I ask her to withdraw it, or I'll say it out there.
She's a smart lady who I think's been punching below her weight with perhaps a much more average guy.
I serve the people with every ounce of my body, with every ounce of my being.
I've worked well with the New South Wales Premier over many years.
And at all times I've put the people of this state
You
first.
haven't. You put Daniel Maguire before the people of this state.
The opposition moved a motion of no confidence in the Premier in the upper and lower houses, but both failed.
Gladys has been a tremendous Premier, and she has my absolute support.
With Melbourne set to hit 100 days in lockdown this weekend, small business owners are pleading with the government to let them open up.
Enough is enough. The strategy is working.
The Victorian lockdown has become degrading and dehumanising.
Frustration is now hitting close to home for the Premier. Overnight, Daniel Andrews' electorate office was vandalised.
Stop stringing people along and give them an opportunity to get about their daily, normal lives in a COVID-safe way.
It may be at a point where we have to call it and we have to say, look, this is as good as it's going to get.
Victoria has reached the Commonwealth standard to go to the next stage.
I'm about doing what is right not necessarily what is popular.
It's time to ensure that we can now move forward and give Victorians and Melburnians the opportunity to build back, to recover what has been so terribly lost over these recent very difficult months.
So there you are, Premier's under pressure, and of course Queensland Premier is undergoing an election right at the moment as well. So ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's take a very quick commercial break with welcoming GlobeNet Realty, our sponsors for this segment, into the show.
GlobeNet Realty. GlobeNet Realty has been the longest established, trusted and respected agency in its trade area. Washa Chandra, Director of GlobeNet Realty, provides honest and ethical service to her customers. If you are thinking of investing in Brisbane real estate market, or if you are seeking professional property management, then you should contact Usha Chandra today on landline 3865 4466 or mobile 0419 775 416. And for further updates, log on to our website www.globenetralty.com.au. GlobeNet Realty is your own local real estate agency. Situated at Shop 52281 Sandgate Road, Boondall. GlobeNet Realty. Real estate is our world.
GlobeNet Realty. Well, right now we will look at some of the other news, and as we know that the travel bubble that everyone's talking about, and now that it's been lifted, planes have started coming in, but what's actually happening on the ground? Are we managing it, and are we managing it well? That is the question. First of all, let's go to Western Australia, where the Western Australia Premier says federal support in travel bubble arrangement. Let's see that report.
So obviously this has emerged and was not something we expected. Managing people from overseas coming into the state is difficult. We would like further assistance from the Commonwealth, in particular about making sure that those people who come on aircraft into WA, that we get proper manifests and proper advice as to those people that are coming, so we can deal with these situations. We pick these people up by the use of our app, our G2G app, and we put them into quarantine. Obviously these 25 people will come off our international arrival cap, so that means that there'll be 25 people less coming from more vulnerable locations as a consequence of this. So this is not an ideal situation. We would prefer better management of these arrangements, but this is something that has happened that was outside of our control.
So not quite an ideal situation, but the Minister Alan Tudge says Victoria, that report was from Western Australia, and now we're talking about Victoria and the travel arrangements there. And Minister Alan Tudge says that Victoria consented to the travel arrangement. So let's take a look at that report.
They were made aware that this was going to occur. They raised no objections in the meetings, and furthermore expressly authorised individuals who were arriving into Sydney from New Zealand to be able to on-travel into Victoria. Now, I would ask the Premier today to reveal those emails and any other correspondence which shows clearly and demonstrably that they authorised the people to come into Victoria.
So there you go. And of course, another saga in Victoria about who authorised what. Well, right now, let's go to New South Wales, where there is one new locally acquired case in New South Wales.
There has been one new case of locally transmitted COVID-19 in New South Wales to 8 p.m. last night. In the same period, there were 4 cases in overseas travellers in hotel quarantine. There have now been more than 2.9 million tests taken in New South Wales. This includes 12,985 tests reported to 8 p.m. last night, compared with 14,378 the day before. The one new locally acquired case is a close contact of cases linked to Great Beginnings Childcare Centre in Oran Park, who were reported yesterday. There are now 6 cases associated with this childcare centre and 19 in total in the Oran Park Community Cluster. All staff and children who attended Great Beginnings Childcare Centre between the 2nd and 13th of October are considered close contacts and must get tested immediately and self-isolate for a full 14 days from when they last attended. They must stay isolated for their full isolation period, regardless of their test result. Contact tracing and investigations are continuing.
So the measures are being taken, put in place, and of course the contact tracing and everything that's happening for that one new acquired case in New South Wales. Well, right now, moving on, let's take a look at our lead out story for today, and that is the interview of CEDAW Minister Tanya Plibersek.
I think it's extraordinary that 2 years ago the government said it had begun work on a National Integrity Commission almost a year before that. So there's a 3-year delay now, according to the Morrison government's own timetable, on a federal equivalent. And I can't believe even the discussion of what they're proposing now is it's the Integrity Commission you have if you don't want to have an Integrity Commission. It can't look at behaviour that's happened in the past. It can only look at behaviour that's happened after the laws have passed and the body's set up. It can't look at things off its own bat. It can't accept referrals from whistleblowers. So basically the government says, oh, do we feel like investigating ourselves over this allegation? And then if the government wants to investigate itself, it can refer itself to its own Integrity Commission. I mean, what a joke.
And what a joke she says to the Integrity Commission. Well, right now, let's take a very quick look at all the functions and events happening in around Brisbane, and of course, a few events which are taking virtually around the whole of Australia. So there are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Gentex Multimedia live presentation. Hey, it's been wonderful having your company. As I mentioned before, there's so much that's happening out there, and I'd like to once again thank you all for watching, for viewing, and for sharing. As we now, when you have a channel like this on a public platform where there is not a lot of control into what you can do when it comes to, who sees your post and what happens with the post. Of course, these days it's very easy to report and that, you put in abuse, but it is very hard to take it up with some of the social media platforms as to what happens with your posts. Of course, we've been getting wonderful reviews and very good followership on that as well. But of course, no one can please everyone all the time, but we do try. It's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from me. So on this 19th day of October 2020, goodbye from beautiful Brisbane in Australia. Until tomorrow, be good, but most importantly, stay safe.